gonna go for it. So thanks everyone for coming today. We'll have more guests dropping in while we're here, but I just wanted to start off by thanking you for being here. And I'm going to let Kevin, Akira, and then David introduce themselves, and Kirsten. And then we'll go off to the races with some heartwarming and challenging questions. So Kevin, I'll let you start.
Great. Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. I look forward to the conversation. I'm Kevin Kirkpatrick. I am the head of the communications practice at Metropolitan Group, which is a strategic and creative consulting agency that works only with nonprofits, public agencies, and foundations to help build a just, healthy, and sustainable world. We work primarily in addressing health disparities and promoting public health, addressing climate change and promoting environmental justice, and protecting and promoting social justice, human rights broadly. I head the strategic communication practice, so I specialize in the research that goes into developing, deploying, and implementing narrative and messaging strategies to help advance positive social change. I've worked extensively, particularly in recent years, on how do you promote the principles of pluralistic and inclusive democracy in the face of rising authoritarianism, both globally and here in the United States. And I've worked for decades on a broad range of public health communications, and also more recently, over the last couple of years, on narratives to change the way people conceive of the concept of economic prosperity and wealth, and how that relates to people's perceptions of the American dream and poverty and all of that. So, really happy to be here today.
Thanks, Kevin.
I think I'm supposed to follow that somehow,
Yes,
but
please. You can do it.
I have the mini background version of Kevin's in that I'm also background is in agency work. I was a co-founder of an agency that was built here in New York, originally called 80 Partners, now New World, that was focused on helping folks who are in the change maker social movement area. And I've moved on since then because I really wanted to do things that were built for the field, and kind of start doing a little bit more weaving work. So I became the CEO of an organization called Imperative 21, which involved national and global organizations that came together to try to build collective narrative power. And that's been kind of my focus around doing that, and specifically around issues around the economy, as almost like every issue that I care about and every issue that we all care about is somehow related to how we work and how money moves. So that's been passionate sounds like a weird word to use right there, but a little bit. And the one thing that as a sales point that I will say is one thing that we did is the interaction between business, culture, and change makers. So a good example of that is we helped produce a podcast on capitalism called Capitalism. It was a season 7 of a well-known series called Seen on Radio, and we just hit the 1 million download mark, which is fantastic for something that's not about a crime drama or something like that. So we're pretty excited about that. And yeah, I think I mentioned this to these all brilliant that I'm probably going to learn a lot more than I'm going to offer. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation today.
Great, thank you.
I can go next. Hi there. Very happy to be here. My name is David Ballard. I'm the Associate Director of Narrative Strategies at Groundwork Collaborative and Groundwork Action, which is a part comm shop, part think tank, part advocacy group based in Washington, D.C., where we focus on trying to shift economic narratives towards ones that center working people as the main characters and protagonists of the story that we're telling. So a big focus of ours is lifting up what the main priorities for people are in America right now, which is affordability. It's been that way for a few years now, and there's no signs of that changing anytime soon. So we do research, both including public opinion research like polling and message testing, which I lead for the organization, that tries to get at what people think is wrong with the economy, what they want to be fixed in the economy, and just get kind of broader public opinion on these narratives that are pretty deeply embedded in our country and our political and economic systems. So I'm very excited to talk with you all and to hear from everyone else on the panel about how best to get those narratives out there and to change them towards something that actually serves working people. So yeah, I'll pass it to Kirsten.
Great. Great. So excited to be on this panel with you all. I'm the managing director of Center for Regenerative Solutions. It's a nonprofit that works with cities to help them create climate plans and primarily focused on urban nature-based climate solutions. And I've worked for a long time in the climate space from the tech side early on around energy efficiency and explaining that and the need for it and creating narratives around renewables, EVs, and a whole range of climate technologies and then worked in Washington, D.C. for Henry Waxman, doing a range of climate issues and lobbying and advocacy around that, and creating narratives for new climate approaches. And in that work, I've come to the conclusion that the economy is a barrier to making climate progress. Our current economy doesn't support planet in the way that we need it to, and in this bit of a crisis time for our climate. So I'm excited to be a part of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance and helping to think about ways that we can leverage the moment that we're in to make progress on climate through new economic models and ideas. And so I'm thrilled to be a part of this discussion today.
So thanks. And so Kirsten and I will trade off between asking questions. But I wanted to start first just getting a sense, the word field was used a couple times in your introductions and maybe in different senses of the word. But I am curious, maybe as a starting off point, um, are the three of you noticing any changes in what you're hearing back from the field of common sense and what's going on in people's vernacular? Is it very regional and local? Is it sort of national? Are there things that are changing this year? And if so, what what are you noticing is in the current, like rather than what we're trying to create for 2026 and how we're trying to maybe energize or shift, are you noticing shifts within the past couple months? And it's fine if it's a short answer of no, but so should we just go the same order or go in the order that someone's got an answer? I'm flexible, so
I'm happy to jump in.
please, sure.
Sure, and I would love to hear what everyone else is hearing and thinking. Groundwork has been doing a considerable amount of polling and message testing, both in the wake of or during and in the wake of the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the Republican tax law that passed over the summer. And as well, like the past 6 weeks, we've done weekly polling on the shutdown fight to see, how people are thinking about the different arguments being proposed from Democrats in Congress, from Republicans in Congress, and President Trump. And from what we found not a ton of change. It's been that affordability continues to be the number one priority for people. And I think on the shutdown specifically, we did a bunch of different testing to see, how different arguments played out that were from, both Republicans and Democrats in Congress to see which were most persuasive to people, what was the best explanation for why this fight was being had. And over again, we saw that people were much more galvanized and much more interested in the fight and understood the stakes of the fight when you put it in terms of affordability. So, like for instance, we would test some arguments that were what we call process arguments, which were messages about what, some procedure that Republicans are trying to do, or who were Republicans in or out of DC, like were they like what the state of the negotiations were. And when it focused on that kind of like intricacies, insider kind of messaging that kept the focus on like what's happening in Washington, D.C., people kind of tuned out and they didn't really know what to think. And they're like, this seems like a lot of uh, nonsense. I don't really know what this is. But when you talked about like this fight is happening because we have not extended, or because Republicans in Congress did not extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which helped to lower healthcare costs for people, all of a sudden the shutdown made a lot of sense to people. So I think what we found is that when you can talk about what's happening, what economic actions are happening, what the results are in terms of affordability, it cuts through the noise and gets at what people are feeling in their own life. Like people themselves say, like, I know my costs are going up. I can see it in my healthcare premiums during open enrollment. I can see it at the grocery store. I can see it all over the place. And when you give them an explanation, when you explain why that is and tie it back to what's happening in Washington, D.C., then people get interested and galvanized and they want to learn more. They get activated. And when you focus so much on, you know, this is what Democrats in Congress are doing, this is what Republicans are doing, it does this thing that we talk about a lot at Groundwork, that it makes those like elected officials and the government the main characters of our story. And it's much more important to be like, this is about you and how it's affecting your life, and keep working people, families, Americans, everyday Americans as the protagonists of the stories that we're sharing.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'll jump right behind that because
A quick thing, Akira, is there any option to turn up your mic a little bit so we could hear you a little?
Is it not high enough? No?
Well,
Let's see.
if there's an easy way to do it, that'd be great.
Let me see if I can just select him.
If that works. Does that work
I mean,
better?
I hear you clearly. It's just low. So
Or just low? Okay, let me just check
that's
these
better.
out.
That's great. Whatever you just
This is good?
changed.
This is good?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Sorry, I think I had the wrong setting. Yeah, I think a lot of what David said is so important. Um, as far as the trends, I would echo everything I just heard. And the thing that I would say from like the narrative systems change kind of an angle that I come from is people want grounded hope right now. This is not the moment necessarily for like a people don't want people grounded hope almost feels revolutionary, in scope, because of everything that's happening. And we have a very splintered media landscape. So what's the advantage, I think, for us is that local, like the peer-to-peer stuff, the closer touch points, the trusted sources actually have a lot of value. So if we invest in that, that would be pretty good, especially state by state, I would say. And that kind of grounded hope around affordability, around things that people understand already, meeting them in the place that they're feeling. And I don't think that what I would say is like this is not just the last five. I think you were just asking for the last 5 months, but I think for a while now. And someone mentioned climate. Maybe it was Kirsten. I think you mentioned climate. People are way past fear narratives. This is going to happen to the climate, or this is what's going to happen to your family. They need what I think is a version of grounded hope at this moment, and meeting them where in language, as David just mentioned, that they relate to, and they are the protagonists in their own story, which goes to a lot around what narrative is really like. This is a little meta, but what it's really about, which is agency. It's not only you're the center of the story, but you actually drive the story, especially when institutions are being challenged, especially when other people are driving other stories that sometimes don't include you or people that look like you. Agency really matters. So a lot of our narrative work is, as David mentioned, about like real people, real issues, all that stuff, but also understand that we don't, to use David line, we can't afford to leave behind the identity work that narrative does. Do you belong or do you not belong? In what world are we saying you belong in? What does that look like? And it has to be something that's grounded, something that I can feel and I can touch. Because right now, in this storytelling marketplace, I need to touch the gold. I need to touch the things that I own and the people that I care about and the things that the community that I'm in. And I think that's what we can do because we're actually offering that. So that's that's why I wanted to go right after David. Sorry, to interrupt anybody else who was ready to go. But yeah, I just wanted to build on what David was saying because I think it's a really smart spot to start from.
Agreed. And I'll pull on a couple of those threads. In no particular order. Affordability has always been, at least in my lifetime, the thing that people care about most. I mean, you think about it was 1992, the first Clinton campaign. It's the economy, stupid, was the mantra they had up on the war room. I mean, it always gets down to, on some levels, bread and butter issues or kitchen table issues, as Joe Biden used to refer to them. What's really interesting to me is you would have thought that one of the lessons of the 2024 election was that you can't convince people of something that they patently know is not true from their own lived experience. So the Biden administration kept trying to convince people that the economy was going in the right direction, and indeed it was going in the right direction. But they appeared to be minimizing the impact, particularly in terms of affordability on people in their everyday lives. It's interesting in the past couple of days, while some Republicans are saying we've got to really buckle down and focus on affordability, that the president then comes out and says we don't have an affordability problem. We've got a fake news problem with the media telling you that the economy, which is going to fail I would think would just fail as miserably as the Biden campaign's efforts, although there is a great deal of tolerance in the current political environment for people to, because of the deep calcified polarization that we have, that you're willing to forgive your side anything, almost anything. This will be an interesting test case for whether those who supported Donald Trump, for example, will stick with him or put continuing pressure on him to truly do something to address the fundamental issue for which he was elected. And which doesn't seem to be getting resolved yet to people's satisfaction. I do think that there is also, as Akira, as you were referencing, there are a lot of things that are coalescing around this idea of agency and hope. And we have had decades of declining trust in institutions. We have increasing misinformation, malinformation, disinformation that is making it almost impossible to take at face value the information that we're being confronted with. We also have been experiencing decades of declines in social cohesion, where people feel disconnected from their community. They're focused increasingly on the blinders right in front of them. And we have rising global, world-ending existential threats that are approaching us from every direction. If climate change isn't going to get us, the next global pandemic is going to get us. If that doesn't get us, AI is going to kill us all. I mean, there's like nuclear war is now rearing its ugly head. And I think people are very much, to your point, Akira, like they're narrowing their funnels to what they feel like they can control. And that has virtually nothing to do with anything related to politics or government because people are so convinced that the process and the institutions are broken. I don't think it helps any that, David, to your point about people seem to really resonate with the argument that was being made on a policy level about why the shutdown was being at least in part, led by the Democrats. Certainly, the Republicans are in control. They could have reopened the government at any point. But the framing of why the Democrats were holding out seemed to be resonating. And I would have thought that their elections last Tuesday would have put wind behind their sails to continue to stay the course on that. Instead, 8 senators aligned with the Republicans to reopen the government. And I think that while people are going to be relieved that the government is reopening, uh, it's also going to reinforce that this Congress politics is just broken. I mean, nobody sticks with anything, and I think that that doesn't bode well for how we confront the challenges that are certainly coming, um, at us from every direction, more
Yeah.
so than perhaps at any point in our lifetimes.
Thank you. Well, before I turn it over to Kirsten for another question, do either of you want to add anything else or ask each other a question before we move on, or you're good? Okay. So Kirsten, so
Yeah,
yours.
just want to touch on a theme that you all mentioned, which is trust. We're living in a time, it's kind of the post-truth world, alternative facts and all of that we've all been subjected to. And so, the factions are separating and people, as you've all pointed out, don't know who to trust. And they're definitely not trusting the media. They're not trusting, so the communication channel, the official kind of communications channels that we've known, and they're not trusting government either. Um, is part of a new narrative about, uh, you know, prioritizing trust. Should trust be a national priority? And how can narratives actually help build civic trust in a time like this?
Oh, Kirsten, you are just hitting my hot button, and I'm afraid I've got to just step on the soapbox for just a second. Because I am a strategic communication professional. It has been my career for decades. And I specialize in researching, developing, deploying, and evaluating the impact of narratives to advance social change. And I will tell you that since last November, the one of the biggest sources of frustration for me, in even with regard to some of our clients and the sectors we work in, public health, environmental justice, higher education, children, youth, and families, is the extent to which institutions are saying we need a better narrative to rebuild trust. And I'm here to tell you that no narrative is going to rebuild trust. These institutions have to earn trust by proving themselves worthy of it. The broad electorate in 2024 basically expressed a desire to blow up all the institutions that are perceived to not be working. I think it is imperative that there be parallel efforts to, yes, tell a more powerful story about what these institutions do, the difference they make in people's lives, but that has to be very closely paired with honest, authentic efforts to reevaluate the institutions themselves and figure out where they went wrong and how they are not currently meeting the needs and desires and wishes and wants of people, and demonstrate that they are making meaningful progress towards reform of the institutions, or the narratives are going to lay a big old flat egg and we'll be back where we started again, and perhaps even have done more damage because we've tried to convince people of something that is patently not lived out in their experience.
Yeah, I have to agree with Kevin that trust is built through experience, number one, with a major dot to it, number one. The narrative role here is just understanding that what we're selling at the end of the day, if we think of it as just we want to be the best at our jobs and doing the marketing for our ideas, we are selling a future that you should trust. They're selling a future you should fear. We can never, when we sell fear, we lose. When we start thinking about how to sell trust, we can't do that if you're not trustworthy, to Kevin's point. Exactly. It's exactly his point. But we should be thinking about a narrative that means that you matter. You're at the center of the story. And here's, you belong. This is what trust is about. And there's a lot of evidence in the last 5 months that common wins and solidarity ideas are winning. We're just not doing enough of it. There's a lot of evidence that those like narrative like ideas are pushing through. The problem, to Kevin's point, is that the follow through kind of sucks. So dad can say, I love you, you know, and I'll be here at dinner, but doesn't show up for dinner. It doesn't, no narrative is going to fix that. I think that we have to own our narrative pieces, which I think is just understanding that what we're selling is trust and reliability and consistency. And what just happened with the Democrats is the exact opposite. They broke so many people's trust just now. And that's so short-sighted. And that's why so many people are pissed off. Um, and no narrative can fix that action. And I think, Kirsten, to your question, we should have it at the front, but it's like saying, the horses and the shields should be at the front, but like you forgot the horses, you forgot the shields. So I'm just a jerk off at the front of the thing. It doesn't really work. So yeah, I think it has to come together at the same time.
David, anything you want to add or move on to?
No, I don't think so. I think that's exactly right. The point about delivering being part of how you rebuild trust, to Kirsten's point, I think is really spot on. And we've done some polling and message testing that finds that exactly. We'll be releasing that next few weeks. But that inability to deliver on the promises is a really big factor in a lot of the lack of trust in parties who, there's plenty of support for the agenda that they're running on and claiming to be able to put into place. And people are like, that's great, but I don't think you're going to follow through. I don't think you're going to do it. And so it's that kind of failure that starts to take hold as a narrative. And it just takes a lot of time to rebuild trust, and it takes
Yeah.
action to redo it. So.
If I could though,
Please.
before we leave, so that we don't leave this particular conversation on such a downer, we are seeing evidence in the work that we've been doing since the November election of glimmers of hope for foundational narratives that can help move social purpose broadly in a more positive direction. Of course, you have to connect with what people care about in their own lives. You have to connect with their core values. Family and a sense of belonging is always at the top of the list of what people truly value in their own lives. That value has not typically been associated overtly or even very directly with policy choices. We seem to disconnect things at a very macro level, policy choices from what people really care about. That's why the affordability issue is a real important test case here about how things are going to play out. But we have found that connecting even the concept of democracy and what it means to what people care about in their own lives, the sense of belonging and family is really important. Another thing that's important is people recognize that we are really incredibly polarized right now. People have lost friends and family members over an inability to even have a civil conversation, right? So they see it play out in Washington all the time. And yet people gravitate towards an understanding that strong democracies aren't afraid to admit that they haven't always lived up to their promise and to do the hard work of being better tomorrow than they are today. And people really gravitate to the notion of finding common ground is central to how we survive as a democracy. It's always been foundational to our democracy that we work together to figure things out. And sometimes we win and sometimes we lose, but finding that compromise is what enables us to move forward. And people are longing for more compromise. At the same time, they also, because of the polarization, they're pulled in those opposite camps. So I think that getting back to an earlier thread of the conversation about we can't rely on politicians to advance this kind of narrative. We have to figure out a way to inspire it in people in their own lives and in their own storytelling, because that kind of direct intervention through people we know and trust in our own lives, in our own communities, showing how we can work together to overcome divides is going to be really essential to starting to rebuild trust from the bottom up, because it's not going to come from the top down.
Yeah, I just want to add Kevin beautifully said. I just want to add a really quick thing to what you've just said is that like the narrative isn't coming from us. What we're doing is creating the conditions for the narrative for them to live the narrative. They have to live being brothers and sisters in this country to lead. We're not going to give that to them. They have to create the conditions to disagree, to go to Thanksgiving and go, it's okay, you think this and I think that, and that's fine. They are doing that. We are not doing that. We're just helping create the conditions. That's what we do as narrative strategists, is create conditions for belonging and for acceptance and for debate. And if we have that, we have democracy, great. And then we defend the institutions that defend that. But that's what I mean by agency. That the narrative has to be carried by the people, not us. And so it's not a messaging problem. It's a lack of agency, narrative agency problem of who are we in this country? Who am I in my own family? That's the problem. And so what we can do is say, instead of going to fear, or instead of like running to the debate, like I'm on this side and you're on this side, and hell's bells to you. I'm trying not to swear because I know this is being recorded, and I'm sorry, I'm from Europe. I have a swearing problem. So whatever. In other words, don't do that. uh, what I think we have to think about a little bit more is how are we helping people live into a story that Kevin just mentioned people are desperate for. We are living in a period of history where we are further from our families than we've ever been. We're further from church and institutions that used to bring us together, community centers, whatever, agnostic, religious, whatever. And people need like to belong, and they need touchstones, and they need to do it together. And the whole point of this democracy, the whole point of the modern society of like I don't hunt my own food, you know, which I think is obvious if anyone looked at me just now, but like, yeah, I don't. You know, we were in a collaborative society, and just retelling that story and bringing that and inviting people into it, and for them to be the storytellers. That's the thing that we're missing sometimes. We think about talking to people. Let's stop talking to people. Invite them into the story. Invite them to be the storytellers. And that's, I think, where we need to start spending more of our time, more of our money, and more of our energy.
David, if you don't have something, I'm going to ask a question which relates to this. But so it sort of fits in that our theme that we decided at We All California was how could we use the 2026 elections throughout California. We have a governor's race, we have mayor's races, we have House members' races, all sorts of other races to give people agency. How can we, instead of just giving them policies that we want to see, but how can we all California produce something that helps people feel agency during that election time, either questions to ask different representatives or conversations for them to have in their local community. But so it fits very well with what you're all talking about, which is how do we center people in action, in agency, in the story, so that we could leverage, because politicians do make a difference, fortunately or unfortunately. And so we have an opportunity, not that every message we're trying to get across or every policy is going to come to fruition in 2026, but if we could start seeding the idea that people can have conversations with elected or prospective elected officials, that story seems important to me. And we're looking for ideas or collaboration about how to do that better, how to help people look at elections with a different lens that helps them see that they do have potential to lift up certain issues or to hold politicians accountable, for trust, like you were talking about, Kevin, where if people are breaking trust, do we just move on, or do we, so curious, I guess, to form it into an actual question, what are your thoughts on people's responsibility or participation in 2026 elections beyond voting?
I would say that it's a very big question. And I think part of the answer is this has to be a movement of movements. And what I mean by that is it can't just be the usual suspects who are going out there trying to spread this narrative. If there's any hope to do what Akira was talking about, building on what I said about, building from the ground up, how do we engage people in these kinds of conversations where they are, meeting them where they are? And I think that that's going to be through churches, through public libraries, through barbershops and stylists. I mean, where people are having these conversations, and I would try to take them offline as much as possible, because when people interact with people, I mean, this contact theory goes back, decades and decades and decades. When people have a direct contact or with someone different from themselves, with a different worldview, a different lived experience, a different race or ethnicity, whatever, about whom they may have certain stereotypes, connecting with people directly is the most powerful tool to undercut that and to build people's receptivity to considering another point of view or accepting another person. So I think we need to find a way to spark these kinds of conversations through the channels that people rely on, that are not the traditional media or political news dissemination channels. Although Tip O'Neill was famous for saying, if anyone remembers Tip O'Neill, I'm one of the older people on the ground, but all politics is local. And those conversations that people are having in barbershops, in public libraries, at block parties, wherever they are, is going to be really important. So I think it's building relationships with community-based organizations that already have the trust and the networks in communities, and finding a way to build their capacity and support their capacity to encourage these kinds of conversations happening all over the state.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll build off that really quickly because I think that's absolutely, Kevin, I think that's absolutely right. Three things I'll say around that. One is, I'll first caveat. I tend to I realize that I talk about this stuff like this is wrong and this is wrong, and this is wrong. So it kind of gets down. So I want to go up on this side of it. I think California has an incredible opportunity, and incredible assets already in place, and incredible communities to tap into. So I agree with Kevin that part of it is finding the trusted messengers. There's incredible immigrant communities in California who are very organized. There's great faith leadership in California. There's great labor communities in California. Tap into those things. There's a lot of gold to mine, I think, in California around those things. The second thing I would say is it's absolutely, while I agree with Kevin that we have to make sure we're doing the offline stuff, the online stuff really matters. And so it's not a yes, one or the other. You got to do both. And the online stuff is just really taking a look at what you're doing right now, and if it's not anywhere near best in class, start bringing in people who know what they're doing around that, and adjust, because it might not be the people you know right now, but you need to be doing explainers and being in trusted communities, because online is not just about flash stuff. It's about people trusting somebody on TikTok or Instagram because that's the person they listen to. And if you're not in that conversation, you're just really missing half the conversation. So I think it's important to get over the uncomfortableness sometimes of we don't know how to do this, and get into like we're gonna be really good at this, and there's no reason you can't be, and also because you got a good story. And the last thing I'll say is there does need to be an overall what is the future of California story that everything can kind of like coalesce towards. Is what is the future that you're presenting about the future state of California that you're all working towards, that people can feel in their hearts as Californians instead of like some abstract thing like it'll just be better or whatever, or they can take pride in and they can just start building their identity around. Like I'll always come back to a lot of our storytelling is around what we can aspire towards, but what we can aspire towards often has to do with how I see myself.
Mm.
I'm this kind of family person. I'm this kind of neighbor. I'm this kind of citizen. I'm this, and we have instead of like, and because the fear story is the same. The fear story is like if you don't do this, you're not taking care of your family, and you're all in danger. So if we're gonna step out and you're gonna like vote for the first time, which happens a lot in California, from what I understand, and there's a lot of people who haven't. If you're going to step out of your norm, then you have to offer them. And when you do that, this is what it's going to feel like. And this is what your experience will be. And this is a community you will belong in. And that's why I'm saying there's a lot of nuggets here because there's all these little local avenues to connect to. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of what can happen in California. It's really an amazing state full of all kinds of uh, unique opportunities that no other state I don't think has. So yeah, I'll stop there because usually I get a
Awesome.
little negative.
Okay.
I can jump in. Kind of building off Kevin and Akira's points. I feel like uh, I think a main challenge here is to figure out how to capture attention. Like how there's so many different inputs coming in, there's so many different stories, so many different things to follow, that it can be difficult for the message we're trying to get across to actually land with people and to cut through the noise. So something I think about in my work a lot is this going to grab someone's attention? Is this going to grab someone's attention and keep it for a bit to like hit this over and over? I think people say all the time about messaging that you can't just say it once, you have to say it a ton of times and a ton of different methods and a ton of different ways. And that's how something can start to stick with people. And I think there's a lot of examples of this, I think, from this year that one of the best ways to not to be a downer or like negative or anything, but one of the best ways to capture attention is to pick a fight, and is to show that like the problem that we're trying to solve, on the economy for us, it's like affordability. That didn't just happen out of nowhere. It's not an act, it's not a natural act. It's not like the weather. It was the result of conscious decisions that were made by particular people. Or maybe it was a result of inaction, a lack of decisions that have been made by people in power. And so I think that one of the best ways that you can capture attention is to pick a fight and like name the people who are breaking our economy and breaking our system. Name the corporations, name whatever you think it may be. And I think to Akira's point about making it local. We're talking about issues that are um, hurting people across the country, whether it's rural or urban or a red state or a blue state. It's across the board, but it takes different forms. And so I think you should lean into the form that it takes for you. Like, is there a utility company in your area that is jacking up electricity rates, utility rates, far beyond what is necessary, or to power a new data center, whatever it may be? Like naming and getting specific about that, I think is useful, one, to capture attention, and useful two, because it starts to hold elected officials, regardless of their party, to account for how they're going to counteract that bad behavior. And I think that in doing so, you set up the people who are supposed to be representing us an opportunity to rebuild trust. If you are out there and you're helping advance a narrative that's saying like this, X company or X special interest is doing Y harm to me, what are you going to do to stop that? And then you give them the opportunity, if they get into office, to actually execute that ask and like make it happen. And in doing so, that's one of the ways you can start to rebuild trust. So like I said, I was going to hold this person accountable, and I did, and I got this result for you that's has like a tangible positive impact on your daily life. Um, so I think as much as you can do for your local community to make that specific to you, I think that's really important. And then the other point I'll make is in addition to the election next November, in July is also going to be the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I know there's a lot of orgs who are already thinking about, how can we use that moment to have a conversation about where we are as a country right now and what we're trying to build towards. And so to get to the points that a lot of people have been making already about charting out a forward-looking vision that's like positive and optimistic and hopeful, that is a really useful moment in time to lay out that narrative and help use that to shape, the rest of the election season to tie what we're trying to do right now in the next 11 months, 12 months, to this longer work that we're trying to build out for the next couple generations.
Yeah.
Hopefully it galvanizes people to see, a kind of how do I phrase this? People really disillusioned right now because the system is so broken, and a lot of people see that and there's put their hands up and say, I'm not participating in this. And when you can start to make people feel hopeful, that's when they get involved in the system.
Yeah.
So the 50th anniversary could be a really useful point in time to make those arguments.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff, David. And I just learned 2 hours ago it's also the 175th anniversary of California next year. Didn't know that. So I'm loving this, and this is great. I'm so grateful that the three of you came and are having this discussion. The time is, however, flying quickly. And so I just want to give Dorothy, I know Dorothy, well, I'm guessing that you had a question, so I want to give you a chance to ask it before we wrap up in 10 minutes.
Oh, only me? I bet other people have questions
Well,
and
we'll see how it
comments
goes
too.
if we have time. Otherwise, I know Kirsten had some other questions too, and she was kind enough to defer to you. So,
Well, I'm here because uh, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance has chosen a pretty good name for the future that we want, the Wellbeing Economy. And I've made a list over the past uh, couple of years of all of the names for the future economy that all the different groups are using. There's the new economy, the fair economy, the green economy, the regenerative democratic economy, the next stage of capitalist economy, the fair economy, et cetera, et cetera. But the coalitions have not agreed on a name yet. I thought when I found out about the well-being economy, I thought that was a good choice. And their language, or your language, I don't know if you represent them, is not attacking capitalism and is not embracing socialism or communism, but it is trying to define a new vision. I thought that was smart. But I do think, and I'll ask you a question when I finish making my comments. Right? I do think that everything you said is pretty much true, and I'm glad to be here. But I do not think we should underestimate the role of the elected officials and the candidates in establishing both the narrative and the trust. Because what Mamdani did in New York, with no history, he hadn't proven himself, but because he reached out to the people and because he spoke about key issues with a promise, people thought it was worth voting. They came out, 100,000 people helping his campaign, knocking on doors, including my daughter. He created trust
sure.
in
Dorothy,
a
I'm going to
surprise.
encourage you to ask your question because we're going to run out of time otherwise.
Okay, my question is how do you all define the future economy, and how do we get from here to there, in your opinion? Some of you have already answered that, but are you in agreement about the well-being economy? Do you think we should name the the power dynamics that are concentrating power and wealth in the top 1% in a way that Trump succeeded in winning his base by partly talking about it's rigged.
Sure.
The game is rigged. And we have to speak to people's awareness that they're being exploited, excluded, overworked at low pay.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, Kirsten and I are volunteers for the Wellbeing Economy Alliance California Hub, and the other three were generous enough to join us today and are probably part of WEAL Global's alliance, I guess, or have certainly participated in it. So whoever, Akira, looks like you're ready to go. So
Yeah, I'll say something real quick because I want to hear from everybody else. What I would say is, unless I hear a citizen of the United States in Minnesota to California say something about the well-being economy, then that's a good narrative. If that's not what I'm hearing, that's not a narrative to me. It has to come from them. We can't bestow a narrative on people. We have to activate a narrative from the people. So that's a very different relationship around narrative, especially around these ideas. We have to be a little bit more focused on how people bring up a story for themselves versus how the ideas that we bestow on people. So that's one. The second thing I'd say is that we have to meet people where they're actually having these conversations, and we're really not close, which is one reason why a lot of these ideas are on the margins, really far away from political debate, journalistic debate, business debate, and we have to infiltrate. We have to find ways in, and so that means investing in the infrastructure to do that kind of work, which means, again, not thinking like, hey, I want you to just say these things out of the stories have to come from business. The stories have to come from people. This is a people-run revolution. It's a revolution what you're talking about, Dorothy, and it's a beautiful one, but it's a revolution. And so it cannot be bestowed on people. It has to come from the people. And I would love for us to work more on the conditions that help those people lead that revolution than try to manufacture it, which won't work, especially in 21st century media markets.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with everything you said, Akira. We've actually been working on a wealth narrative for Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that is involved some pretty extensive research. Jennifer has talked with some of you about it, my colleague Jennifer Messenger. And I think one of the challenges that we've had is that what really resonates with people that are working in the field to advance the idea of a well-being economy, which is something that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is very supportive of. But that's not the conversation they're having in Minnesota, to Akira's point. And so I think it is a generational shift that we are trying to move people towards because we are so deeply invested in on so many levels in terms of the values that Americans tend to hold, in the dominant stories that people have about, everybody wants to be rich in America. And the pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all of that kind of damaging mentality and mindsets. What's interesting to me is that while a lot of people inside the well-being economy sector bristle at any reference to the American dream because it is grounded in so many damaging mindsets. On the other hand, when we tested notions, labels like the American dream, economic well-being, and wealth, what we found is that the ideas most associated with the idea of economic well-being and wealth were basically the same three. Not stressing about money, financial security now and the ability to save for the future, and being comfortable. Now, those don't necessarily take you in a really dramatically different direction than what people are looking for in their everyday lives, but it's all about financial security. When you ask people what they associate with the idea of the American dream, one of those is the same: financial security now and the ability to save for the future. But there are two others that aren't on the radar screen as high for economic well-being and wealth. And those are providing a better future for my children and loved ones. And interestingly enough, living in a country where everyone has equal rights and opportunities. I don't think we should be running away from the idea of the American dream. I'm not speaking for Metropolitan Group or for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I'm speaking for me. I think we need to redefine the American dream to embrace what people are already telling us it includes. It's not just about money for them. It is about a future for themselves, for their families, and their communities. It is about living in just communities and a country where everyone has equal rights and opportunities. I think similar to us needing to redefine democracy for the next 250 years, I think we need to redefine the American dream by leaning into how people already define it, which is much broader than we give them credit for.
Wow.
I want to quickly agree. Equal rights and opportunities are words that are just as important as affordability, and it's going to be a mistake if people just grab affordability and leave out opportunity.
Yeah. So David,
sorry, really quickly. I just want to jump in. I'm sorry. I'll take all of us 60 seconds. As a strategist, it's been in working in America, it's been mind-boggling to me exactly what Kevin's saying, that people who I try to work with run from the American dream, run from words like freedom. Like, you got to own this stuff. It's okay to evolve it. It's okay to evolve it. Like, I love I can't remember what the phrase is, but the State of the Union that's imperfect. I don't. You guys probably know it better than I do. But the admission that we're still trying to perfect the union is a beautiful idea. Where I come from, we do not say stuff like that. We just accepted mediocrity and corruption and whatever. So this is a beautiful American idea. And it would be so American to say we had a new American dream. And I strongly believe no matter what country you're in, you have to play narratively with the story of the country that you're in. So if this country was about immigration at some point, and it was about people pushing through, we don't all have to bootstrap. That's the bad version of the story, but we could tell a good version of that story. Find the good version of that story and keep pushing it. But push the story of the soul of the country. That you can't just try to tell a completely other story. You can't pretend tomorrow America is going to be Denmark. It's not. It's just not. So that's one thing I have found on our side. We've been running away from the story, to what Kevin's saying a little bit. So I feel pretty passionate about it, so I wanted to interrupt. So
No
anyways,
problem.
that's it. I'm done.
And I'm happy to stay on, but I know some people probably need to leave at the top of the hour, so I just want to respect anyone who needs to drop off. But David, want to make some time for you before we wrap up, and any closing thoughts you have, or so?
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
No pressure at all.
I totally agree with everything else that's been said. And I think, Dorothy, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd also talked a little bit about like how much to like curb or to stop like the like private power or things like that. Did I hear that right? I think that's from Groundwork's perspective, you're like speaking our language on that point. I think it's really necessary, as I talked a little bit about before, to when trying to advance a narrative about why this economy has failed for the last 40, 50 years specifically, and where we want to go first. Part of that has to have an explanation of what went wrong. And I think that the people we found in our research, like unprompted, we hear from people about corporate power and the influence of wealthy, special interests, of elites, of these corporations, billionaires, whatever you want to use, whatever phrase, that they have bought influence over this political and economic system to make it work for them. And I
Right.
think that any story that doesn't meet someone where they are on that front, which is like you can call it populism, you can call it whatever you want. If you're not meeting them there, then I think you're really missing out on how they're viewing the world right now and what they think needs to be fixed. We've done a lot of,
Totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, that like finds um, that, people say, like, if you want to address affordability, what, we ask, like, what do you think is um, more effective way to do that? And like every single time people talk about corporate power and they talk about reining that in. Like we've asked them, like, what do you think is we've asked this question like 3 or 4 times in different polling projects this year. It's like my favorite question is like, what do you think is the bigger problem with government today? Is it that the government is wasteful and there's like this too much red tape and there's bureaucracy is not streamlined, and that stops private sector from doing what they need to do? Or is it that they cater too much to the special interests and billionaires and they have too much power in the system? And every single time, at least 2/3 of Americans, including large chunks of Republicans, say the latter. They say that
Right.
it's because of this concentration of power. And I just think that it's really instructive for how we have to move forward, that people know that this isn't the only way it's supposed to be, that this isn't unfixable. And in directly acknowledging that, you can start to get them to understand that like that was a result of decisions that have been made. And if it was a result of decisions that have been made, then we can make new decisions to have better outcomes. And I think that's just so important to get to the point that's been made a lot about
Totally.
agency and giving
Right.
people a role to play.
They also think we should tax the rich and we should raise the minimum wage
Yes, they
to a
do.
living wage.
Yes, they do. We agree.
Well, this has been awesome for me. I'm not to be too selfish, but I really appreciate everybody's time. I'm sorry, Kirsten, that you didn't get to ask some of your other questions, but I just really enjoyed this completely, and it's stirred up so much thinking and so much energy about future things that we could do. So I'm very grateful to you. Any last words from the three of you, or four of you? So.
Just a question, how do you want people like me to relate to the We All Alliance or the Wellbeing
Yeah, let me
Economy
get back
Alliance?
to you on that separately. I just wanted to give the three of them and Kirsten a chance to say anything before we wrap up, and then you could stay on, you and I could talk. So, Kevin, Akira, David, Kirsten, any last quick thoughts? Okay,
I'll just say people made the system and people can change it. So, people see the economic system as coming from on high. And I think part of the change is helping people understand the economy as participatory and remind them to all of your points that they have agency and that their daily decisions are the economy, the daily decisions they make of how they
Just
spend their
real
money.
quickly to build on that, yeah, we found this messaging really works across a wide range of issues. We found it really prominently powerful in the idea of discussing systemic racism, that these conditions did not just occur. They were created through policy choices and decisions that were made intentionally to keep certain people from being able to access opportunity. And there's no reason why we can't change those policies to widen the opportunity available to people. So.
A real quick thing I'll say is that narrative work is super tough, super hard. It can be very intimidating. I won't speak for David and Kevin, but uh, um, we're here. Like we're here because we think it's valuable to try to have the chat about it. And as much as what we've said, what we've heard back as well, has been so valuable. So it's something that we're all trying to learn how to do. It's very scary, and that's why Kirsten, David, thank you so much for having us because you created the forum for this. And this more of this, please, because I mean, I had a blast just listening to David and Kevin, for example, and Dorothy for her questions, and Linda and Irene. There's not enough time, but I would love to just keep this conversation going because I think it's very valuable.
great. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone.